I'm Danny Otto. Welcome into an all-new episode of That Recap Show. Now, before we get to the episode, just want to issue major spoiler alert. We are going to be going over everything that happened in episode 3 of the Acolyte series. So if you haven't watched that episode yet, you may want to pause this video, head over to Disneyplus, check out that episode, and then come back and enjoy the breakdown. Now, with that out of the way, let's start the show.
Poppin' Off presents That Recap Show.
All right, joining with me to break down everything from episode 3 of the Acolyte series, it's Jon Jon Rico.
Hello.
Hello.
How we doing?
Woo.
Hey, we doing? How we
Hey,
doing?
we doing? That's our new catchphrase. Hey, we doing, everybody?
Yeah, how we doing?
We're doing good. Look, I'm thoroughly enjoying the first 3 episodes of the Acolyte so far. I really like kind of this mystery. Like I like that. I like having not having the answers and kind of getting questions. And I mean that in like a good way of like, it's not like, oh, well, they're just giving us more stuff we don't know about now or anything like that. I like this. I like this kind of suspense. I like this kind of, we're not given the full story. I like that because it's giving me, a reason to want to see the next episode each week and stuff like that. I mean, I know we're only on week 2, but we've had 3 episodes, but it's giving me those kind of questions and me wanting to watch more to kind of, uncover a little bit more. And I like getting those breadcrumbs. That's what I like. Sure. And so
the pacing is really nice so far.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, getting right into it. The best thing that my brain could think of was
boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
Because, I mean, we get, I felt like it was a very little kid response to like, well, if I can't have the toy, nobody can, and they break the toy type of thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's a very like universal kid response to something.
Very emotional response, yeah.
Right. I get that this one was kind of on a much grander scale. I mean, we're like, well, you can't leave if I burn you down, like type of thing, like that. Oh, holy shit, that escalated a little bit, but it's a very universal like kid response to something. And so I just like how I like how they had that in there, but like all of us, growing up have kind of lived through that, or we've had younger siblings, younger cousins, like anything like that, and you've seen that response to things. So it's just something that I understood getting that on the receiving end. But yeah, I mean, just like I said, we got some stuff revealed, but at the same time had even more questions. And before I get too far, because there are plenty of things I want to talk about, but I don't want to kind of gloss over anything and then kind of talk about our takeaways before we even get to takeaways. Rico, what were some of your instant reactions for episode 3?
Yeah, I thought it was a really big episode for backstory, of course, because we're obviously went straight to is it Blendock, isn't it, or Brendock, or the name of their home
Brendock,
planet?
yeah,
Brendock, yeah, the name of their home planet, where we know the whole events that we were kind of wondering about in the first 2 episodes. We're already getting to see like what took place in this 3rd episode. So I was actually really surprised that we saw it so early. I wasn't expecting to see this like in the 3rd episode of the season. I would have expected maybe 5, 6, so somewhere along that line. Yeah, especially when we got to know the main characters just a little bit more. But this was really cool to kind of get a sense of what the twins were like early on in their lives, right? You actually got to see that, you get to see that they're kind of like a little bit like themselves like later on in life, but there's also glimpses of how they're very different before the events took place as well. May was very happy where she was. She was very content on being like this up and coming witch, and with like this kind of like regarded status. Like when they're walking through the village, everyone's bowing to them. So I think she was really excited about this life that she had coming up. And then of course you had May, Osha, who's more like kind of ready to go out there on her own, right? I hope I said that right before. I don't know if it's the same May. Confuse the two. But yeah, Osha's kind of giving me like the Luke vibes in this, where like she's kind of like stuck in this village and she wants to see what's out there, and kind of expand the galaxy more. So when she sees the Jedi, she's kind of ready for that. And I really like to see like the kind of the way they portray the characters before we see them as their adult selves later on in life, and how these events really change them later on. Like May is really content with what she, but she's also like she's the one to lose her sister, and that obviously drives this wedge between her and the Jedi, and ultimately could be like this like the driving force for her mission. So I really like the way they kind of play with that dynamic of her character, and so yeah, it just creates this really uh interesting dynamic between the sisters that also creates more mystery behind it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree, and that kind of leads, really right into my takeaway. So you want to get to some big takeaways?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. All right, I'm gonna kick off big takeaways only because, just like I said, I mean, this leads perfectly into kind of the biggest takeaway I got from this episode was, I really like when we can see perspective from both sides, basically, in something. And this is why I kind of liked Tales of the Sith or Tales of the Empire.
Tales of the Empire, yeah.
Yeah. Because we weren't like watching it and going, oh, these are bad guys. We were kind of seeing the backstory and what the events like led them to kind of be on the Empire side. And ultimately, we had one that kind of, went full on in the Empire side. And then we had one that, reverted back to the light type of thing. But we got to see that journey, and it wasn't just, like the original trilogy is just, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys. You want to root for the good guys because the bad guys are bad.
Very black and white.
Right. So I really enjoy this episode because we got, like you said, major backstory. And we see kind of, Osha and May growing up, and we see their mother, and we see this tribe of, arguably force-wielding witches, basically.
Yeah, covered with witches.
Yeah, which was really cool, and they don't seem like bad people, like at all, and so we're kind of in this like why are they kind of at odds with the Jedi? Because even that small group of Jedi that come in, at least of what we were given from this episode, weren't coming in and fighting people. At least, the information we were given so far. And I'm going to keep saying that because, just like we have already said, we're not given the full story yet. We don't really know, all of the events around this, but it kind of seems like both sides were being civil to each other type of thing during this. And obviously from, May and Osha's tribe side, the Jedi are intruders. They are coming to take the children away. They don't want them to have children and keep continuing this village or coven of witches and continuing it. And from the Jedi side, they're coming in to hopefully get more Padawans to keep getting more and more Jedi. So I like the way that they're able to do that in this series, where we're, we got perspectives on one side, we're getting, kind of backstory and perspectives on this other side. And obviously that, I mean, it ends in this major conflict. And the other part of this, and I kind of brought this up, initially is, we get some reveals. We kind of see some of the events that happened that night, but we don't get all of the reveals. We don't get the full story exactly. And so there's still that air of mystery, and it's still intriguing to have, to pull the curtain somewhat aside, but not fully pull it. So like you're still like, okay, what really happened here?
Yeah, blur the lines.
Yeah, exactly. And I really enjoy that. And I really enjoy how they were able to do that in one episode. Because just like you said, it's very early on to kind of give us this reveal of what happened, but we still have pretty much the same questions. Like how did the fire kill everyone so fast? How did, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's just still so many questions. There's still this air of mystery that, when this episode ends, you're still left with all of these questions. And I just really like how they were able to do that. Also able to give us the perspective of, May and Osha's, mother and group of people that they were born into, basically, and still give us the Jedi coming in that we were already introduced to in the opening 2 episodes. Like, it's just, they did a lot. They did a lot in this episode, but it still kept it this mystery that we're still unraveling. So it was just to me, that was just very cool in the way that they did that, and just very interesting. And I'm intrigued to see kind of, how we're going to get these bits and pieces filled in, and what kind of happens moving forward. But Rico, what were some of your takeaways from this episode?
Yeah, I love the idea of like another faction of Force wielders within the universe of Star Wars, of course. Obviously, and obviously the way that Mother Anastasia is kind of explaining it to the other witches, how like some kind of call this the Force, but we call it the Thread. So
Right.
obviously, like there's other groups out there that kind of look at it in different ways, which makes a lot of sense. Like I was wondering if these were supposed to be like a precursor to like the Knight and Sisters of Dathomir in some way. Just kind of like, and maybe like their magic is somehow evolved later on in time, but.
Mm.
I was wondering if like this Cup of Witch is supposed to be like somewhat tied to them in some way, or just kind of like their own thing. I like the idea of them just kind of being like their own thing. And some interesting kind of notes came out of that, like a lot of their scenes, because we learned some pretty interesting facts there. One of them, the conversation between Coral and Anastasia when we first see them together. And Coral talks about how she carried the twins, and then
Right.
Anastasia says that she created them.
Right.
I'm very interested about that one line, because there's the whole thing about Palpatine telling Anakin about Plagueis being able to manipulate midichlorians to create life. And I wonder how far of a line that timeline goes, that we're at some point that they became like the only people who could actually wield that power. And so I'm very curious what happens to this coven of witches because of that one little thing in general too. Like I think it's a very interesting little factor they threw in there that could possibly be like, just that could have bigger implications going on for the lore going forward. Like there's a lot of heavy lore in here that I think is very interesting. But also, but the whole idea of like the interaction between the Jedi and the witches, and at one point, like it's very formal, but also like they're both standing their ground and what they need to do. Like the Jedi are there, like they don't seem like they're there to fight. But there's still a lot of mystery behind like why they're there in the first place in general, because especially when Endar just straight up lies to her face, being like, "We had no idea this was the place this happened." It's like, no, you definitely knew. Like Saul was tracking you guys earlier. So like the fact that honestly I immediately called her out in their bullshit, and it's just like, okay, we gotta get better, like on a better foot here, so that just like the tensions don't rise too much. And then of course they just show up later on during the fire too. Like we don't really know how they came into play there as well. But the whole idea of like them being like, well, why are you training children here? Like this idea that it almost trying to like monopolize the Force, I feel like, because again, during our time in Star Wars, we don't really know of many other like force wielding factions, I would say, out there that are like, that are prominent in the Star Wars universe. So I have to feel like at some point the Jedi and the Sith too like found a way to almost kind of like monopolize the Force, where it's just kind of like they are the ones who were like were known to wield it, basically. So I really like that aspect of it a lot too. Just like this idea, like back in the High Republic days, that there's just like a bunch of different either covens of witches or just people who were, because like I said, the Force surrounds everybody, right? It binds us. It's an energy field that everybody is in touch with in some form. So the idea that just like these other places we're able to utilize it in some way. So almost kind of like airbenders in the sense, like they're like using the Force like with kung fu and like boom pushing people and stuff. Like pretty cool in that sense. So yeah, I just like the little like the big lore expanding they did in this episode with that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it would be really cool if we were introduced to, little other factions along the way, like just to kind of, exactly what you said, kind of just show how broad, I guess, the Force is, and they could be different terms in the different factions for it, just like we had the Thread in this, and there's just a lot. I mean, there's a lot we don't know. I mean, we're back, like you said, we're back 100 years, which is a significant amount of time, but it's still
enough time to be like within that window.
Right. So you can still have implications that move on to the area that we know already. Type
like
of thing.
Plagueis himself could be a child at this point. So we don't know what his future could end up being, and obviously there could be the point where the Sith that we have in this show could be the one that passed down that knowledge of being able to create life from the witches, And then, of course, Plagueis maybe found a way to make sure he was the only one with that knowledge at some point. And of course, from there on, Palpatine spins the information however he will to Anakin. But it's pretty cool how you can find little ways to plant little seeds that will trickle down into the prequels for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I'm here for all of it. I think it's like I've already said. I am really enjoying kind of how we're having this kind of unfold and kind of just giving us these reveals and these tiny breadcrumbs of other things along the way. It's a very interesting way to do it. I think they took a lot of chances in this series, like obviously not having any connection to the Skywalker or anything having to do with that or that time period in general at all.
There's parallels to it, but it's not like, of course, it's not a direct reference to it. Like I think Ocean to me just reminds me so much of Luke and Anakin, of course. The whole testing scene on the ship was very obviously an homage to Phantom Menace when they do the same test with Anakin, of course, and she's trying to fail, of course, but like you're trying to fail on purpose. Like we can see it through your thing. I love that scene.
That was a really good scene. Yeah. There's so much to like in this episode. I just really enjoyed it. I mean, I know I've said that already. I do really having the kind of air of mystery around certain things. It just makes me want to see more, and I really like when a series can do that. And just like this. Do you want to get to some predictions?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. All right. Why don't you kick off predictions?
Okay, so really, like the whole like main sequence of this episode is the big fire at the temple, basically. But and obviously, though, we had a lot of questions going into that the whole sequence, but I think we almost came out of it with a lot more questions coming out of it. Most of it going into it. So just a couple there that I actually have. One, I found it interesting that we see May holding the fire, but then it cuts away to her before we see like this giant blaze really erupt. So like I wonder if something else caught her attention or somebody else got her attention and then started the fire. And then especially like the way that the sisters interact when they kind of reunite across on the two bridges. Like she's obviously angry at her, but that she doesn't really give off this and like, yeah, I did that, like kind of a thing. I almost feel like she's just kind of like scared as well. But yeah, I thought that was very interesting. We never and also for in that moment, we never see the like obviously we see like how Saul and Osha both think that they saw May die, but we don't actually get to see like the payoff of how May survived. So I imagine we're gonna see that later on when we kind of get like I imagine like a part B to this story where we get to see like the other part of the puzzle that kind of fit it all together. So I'm very interested in that, and of course, like how she's recruited into the Sith after that is going to be very interesting to me. And also this is the biggest question for me because I was very, very puzzled by this when I saw this. We see just a big pile of basically of witch bodies. They're like, it's like I have trouble believing that all these witches died by like smoke inhalation or anything like that. There was no like rubble to say like something caved in on them. So and even like their mother, the way that she's just like they're all just kind of laying there lifeless, but like there's no indication of like what kind of wounds they suffered or anything like that. So there's a big mystery there, along with like why the Jedi and stuff in there in general. So yeah, I'm really very interested to see like what actually went down that caused like this bigger fire to happen, because I don't really think that little fire that May started obviously just caused like this giant
like I
thing
said,
to go down so quickly, right?
It's like so fast.
It just feels like shit went down at the same time, and it's just like a case of bad timing, essentially. And but again, it's also like going back to last week when we were talking about the premiere, like the Jedi are not all that they seem too. There's a lot to be left to say, like what's going on in terms of like their intentions and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, this is like a detective story, and at the end of the day, we always get like these like corrupt cops in the detective stories. So like that's kind of where my head is going as far as like as big reveals and stuff like that later on. So yeah, there's a lot to kind of look forward to. And one thing I noticed here and at the end of the episode when Osha wakes up on the ship is Torben's pretty like messed up from battle in the background too. Like he's got battle wounds and stuff like that. So there's some stuff that went down on the temple that we have no idea what happened yet. And something just came to my head right now. Like when they show the exterior shot of the temple, you know what it reminds me of is the Power Rangers base almost a little bit, like just kind of like randomly shaped building or like structure where like they kind of hang out at. Like I don't know why that reminds me of Power Rangers for some reason, but yeah, that was my final thought of
that. I mean, I'm kind of along the same lines as you. I really want to see kind of I guess a flashback of a flashback, and just kind of
Yeah, part B of the flashback. I
yeah,
feel like,
part B of the flashback. I could see something like, because they were having a council meeting basically, and the discussion was going to be if they were going to let Osha, follow her path to wanting to do, like, that was going to be one of the things they were going to discuss. So I wonder if, like, there's kind of in my head, there's two scenarios that could have been happening from that. One, the council gets in an argument, and we get somebody from the council fighting other people in it.
Yeah, the
Like,
Jedi are probably in that council meeting, I would imagine.
Right. That's
Yeah.
my other scenario, is one of the Jedi starts getting in an argument, and they start clashing. But my first thought was, what if someone in that, like, in the coven, is actually like, you're wrong, like, to their mother, like, it's like, you're wrong.
It could be Coral, their other mother.
That's the thing. Without saying it, I didn't want to say it.
Oh,
but,
yeah, you should say it.
Yeah. Coral. My thought is maybe Coral is not only the one who ends up erupting starting the violence, but I'm wondering if she's the one who rescues May, and kind of goes, okay, you're mine now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what happens to Coral past that, or like if she just raises May to distrust the Jedi, says everyone else is dead because of the Jedi. Like, you know what I mean? Like, plants all of these memories into May. And then obviously May leaves at some point and gets recruited by the Sith and stuff like that, or even bigger stuff past that. But my thoughts are, Coral seemed very displeased with some of the decisions.
Very aggressive a lot of times. I felt like I was like, exactly, lady.
Exactly. So I'm thinking that whatever violence started, I think she has something to do with that violence that started. Whether it was just an infight and then the Jedi came and they were like, oh shit, what's happening, type of thing, and it was already started, or if she started it with the Jedi and then that's what erupted everything, type of thing. Either way, I think she played a part in starting that type of thing. And so I'm very interested to see what happens. I'm also really interested to get back to, the normal time of our story with the grown-up twins, and kind of seeing them maybe hopefully reuniting and kind of, going like, what the fuck? I thought you were dead type of thing. Like, both of them have that kind of, oh shit, I thought you were dead moment type of thing. So I'm very interested.
Gotta get some clarification for both of them. Yeah, for sure.
So we definitely need a flashback part B, but I want to get back into the present with them and kind of figuring out this story. And I want to figure out the motivation of why May wants to kill all of these. If it really is as simple as, Coral rescued her and said, this is what happened. That group of 4 Jedi killed your sister, killed all of the coven, killed everyone basically. Or if this is like, there is something even more on top of that type of thing.
Yeah, I think it's definitely like that built-in resentment, because she was going to take they were going to take her sister away from her at the beginning, and she was like ready to go. So like, obviously that built-in like hatred was already there from the beginning, just for that reason. And then obviously like she's led to believe that the Jedi are responsible for that, the whole thing that happened to their temple, and thinking that Osha died in that whole situation. Like, oh yeah, definitely, it's going to fuel that anger in a lot of ways. So there's going to be a lot of big manipulation happening to May, I think, and these upcoming episodes for her.
Yeah, definitely. I'm here for everything. I cannot wait until episode 4. It cannot come soon enough. But as we always say, that's what we think. Let us know in the comments below. What did you think of episode 3? And when do you think we're gonna get this part B of the flashback? And really, who do you think started this conflict? And is that going to lead to the identity of the Sith that May is now, connected to? And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to hear about all of our latest audio and video podcast releases. Bye, everybody!
Poppin' Off presents That Recap Show.